Boys, what's up, and welcome back to the Bettor Sports Show. I'm Ryan. I'm here with my co-host Randy. I am on my Fight Club arc. I have about 4 hours of sleep, and all I can say is that his name was Robert Paulson, and we're the middle children of history, man. No Great War, no Great Depression, but you know what we can be great at? Fucking gambling. We got the NBA playoffs, we got the NHL playoffs, we got the NFL draft, we have baseball going on, we have all these excellent things going on in sports. So without further ado, let's jump right into it. NFL draft was last night, and football is the biggest sport in America. Of course, we got to start talking about that. For me, this was a draft of offense and quarterbacks. I believe a record number of quarterbacks were taken in the first round. The Giants and other teams tried to trade up with the Patriots to get to number 3. Chicago, they got their franchise guy. They took Caleb Williams. They got another great player in Roman at number 9. I think this was just a wild draft, and a lot of teams did very well. But we know what team didn't do very well. Randy, what did you think about the Atlanta Falcons pick?
So the Falcons pick is crazy, but also one news broke, I think, within the past like 2, 3 hours. The Raiders went tight end once again, which is baffling move to do with their pick with the early value they had. But the Falcons going with Michael Penix. Now, some may think it's a blunder. Um, we'll have to see. This is a long game move. It's similar to it seems like what almost like what the Jets were trying to do, where they with Zach Wilson, where they drafted a guy early, what without plans for him to start early on, and maybe kind of groom him behind a veteran quarterback. A lot of people, myself included, were blown away with the news with the Falcons selecting Michael Penix, just a quarterback in general, uh, right after giving Kirk this massive contract. But to me, it stands out very similar to what Green Bay did with Aaron Rodgers a few years ago, and Jordan Love. They knew they were going to retain Rodgers for quite a few more years. They brought Love in to again just learn the system, no pressure, develop over the years, and then take the reins by the time Rodgers leaves. And that's what happens. And now we see how that's panned out, at least last season. Rough playoff loss. They kind of blew that game, but pretty great regular season. And the kid's real early in his career. I think he might be in his 5th or 6th year in the league now, because I believe he sat on the bench for 4 years. So that looks like again probably what the plan is here with Michael Penix. Kirk isn't going anywhere anytime soon off a fresh contract. But to me, which I don't know if it was talked about all that much in the main media rounds today, but the Eagles coming on top with a massive steal in Quinnen Mitchell, the cornerback out of Toledo. They are absolutely hurting in the secondary, mainly responsible for their downward spiral in the second half of last season. Um, need names back there, not just veteran guys, but they need guys in through the system that are young, that are going to develop. This is a great pick. I love this pick. And they have some youth in their secondary. Uh, oh man, I'm forgetting his name. I just had it in the back of my head. But one Blankenship. There we go. Young stud safety. I believe he was moved up from the practice squad about a year or two ago, and now he's a household name and a steady starter for them. So it looks like Philly's gonna have a pretty competitive secondary, and that they're prepared to build for it. So those are kind of the two more sneaky headlines that I've gotten out of the first 2 days of the draft. Very quarterback heavy, like you had mentioned, 7 or 8 quarterbacks, I believe, went in the first round. I believe that it broke a record or it tied a record for the amount of offensive players that went in the first round. Definitely exciting stuff, but the Eagles GM, Howie Roseman, still easily got to be one of the best GMs in football right now. Guy's absolutely killing it through the draft the past couple years, and they just recently locked in uh, Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown on 3-year contracts. So they know what they're doing over there. It's nice to see that again. You just got crazy value pick out of a 22nd pick late in the first round.
Due to the focus on offense in this draft, I was talking with this today with a friend of mine who follows the NFL religiously. He knows football like the back of his hand. Great guy. The Lions as well were able to get excellent value at the defensive position. Any team that went off a little bit from the beaten path of QB, wide receiver, or offense was able to find excellent, ridiculous value in this draft. Guys who would be going 12, they were going in the 20s. So when you see a need like that, it's always funny to me. It's cool to see the draft strategy teams employ, right? Kind of zigging and zagging, all the misinformation coming out before the draft. One beat reporter says this, one team says that, and then you end up having your draft board available. Do you trade up? Do you trade down? To me, that's always very enjoyable, seeing the game within the game, so to speak, the meta game. I think that the Lions did very well here. And then looking up and down, wide receivers, Marvin Harrison Jr. at number 4 to
Mm-hmm.
Arizona. I think that's everybody expected that pick to happen, so it didn't get really a ton of surprise, not a ton of news, unlike the trades up or the Penix pick, which caught people by surprise. I think that's going to be an excellent combination. Marvin Harrison Jr. can be the franchise receiver there in the desert for at least the next 10 years. He's going to have Kyler Murray chucking it up to him. It's going to be like the meme. All right, fuck it, Marvin Harrison down there somewhere. But as for a fantasy pick, I'm telling you right now, second round, third round, I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is going to live up to the hype, live up to his name. That's when I have circled.
I'll tell you what, we've definitely seen a lot of it in the past couple of years. If there's anything to overhype in first round value and those big names, it's at wide receiver. The amount of tremendously talented first rounder wide receivers that have come out of the draft over the past 3, 4, even you could go back 5 years. I mean, we could sit here all day listing names. There's probably about 15, 20 guys in the league right now that are phenomenal wide receivers, and they're all in the well into the first half of their career or still on a rookie contract. Um, and then again, you got guys like Justin Jefferson who aren't even they haven't even been around that long, and you have to kind of go back. I believe he was drafted 2019, 2020. So there's a lot of hype on wide receivers, but rightfully so. Marvin Harrison Jr. definitely could be a big piece that they were looking for in offensive firepower, but a long-time franchise player as well.
And speaking of firepower, I saw Harbaugh say today for the Chargers when they took Joe Alt. He was like, "What? You're expecting a weapon? Offensive line's the best weapon you can have," and that's the most football guy thing I think I've ever heard. And he's
Oh,
right.
yeah.
You want a good running game? Get a good offensive line.
It's the
You want
biggest thing that
help?
the Jets did. The Jets gave away their value. They traded their 11th for or their 10th to move back one pick and to get the offensive lineman they wanted, which is pretty accurate for them. Jets typically draft deep in the O line, but that's pretty much the most accurate assessment. If you don't have a line offensive front, a front five in the NFL, you're not going to go very far. You might not even get 5 or 6 wins. Offensive line is win or lose in this league for sure.
And then the last thing that I think really stuck out for me, the kind of rumblings as to who's going to be the bust, right? Because anytime there's a bunch of quarterbacks coming out, people are always coming out of the woodwork to point, nope, he's going to suck. That's the bad one. J.J. McCarthy has a lot of detractors due to his role as more of a game manager type at Michigan, right? A lot of those games he was throwing to top 5-star tight ends or handing the ball off to Corum as their path to victory. When he went to the Vikings, I think that's an excellent situation for him. I'm not saying he's the most talented quarterback in the draft or anything like that, but to be a rookie coming into the NFL and you're throwing to Jordan Addison and fucking Justin Jefferson, and that's your safety valve. I
And they
think
got
that's
Hawkinson at
excellent.
tight end. He's a top
Mm-hmm.
3 tight end in my opinion. That's yeah. Excellent point.
I think when you have that scenario, you're going to a team where perhaps they're not contenders, but they're not going to be a bottom of the barrel team. They should be mid tier, can fight for a wild card spot, right? You're not going to have the fans turning on you, booing because they've been frustrated for years and years. Well, I mean, they have. They want the playoff success, they want the Super Bowl, but it's not necessarily a dire situation like other franchises in the league. I think that's an excellent environment and situation to go into as a young guy. I think he could fly under the radar here because looking at some of the other QBs, Caleb Williams in Chicago, whole world's going to be on his shoulders because he has the weapons, he has the staff, He has the defense. Chicago's going to be expected to make the playoffs this year in a very tough division. Drake May in New England, walking in the footsteps of Tom fucking Brady, kid.
They
Right?
haven't done well historically drafting outside of Tom Brady. I don't know how that's going to pan out. I don't know. I'm not sure if that was the position pick that they should have gone with. I'm very surprised that's what the New England selection was.
So I can say, as someone who lives in Massachusetts and a Patriots fan, they needed to give the keys to the franchise to a new guy. If you saw the end of the last year, the crowds at Gillette Stadium, the stadium was empty. Right? People weren't paying those big premium tickets. They weren't going spending the money at the outlets and the shops and the restaurants that they built all around the stadium. So I think they needed a hard rebrand. They needed to bring in a guy to be the new face of the franchise, for better or worse. That's what they wanted. Perhaps the Crafts meddled a little bit in pushing the pick to be quarterback here. I'm conflicted. I think if you take a quarterback top five, you have to be 100% sure that's the guy, right? There's going to be questions about all of these players except for Caleb, right? Drake May, people say, oh, his footwork, this. I like the fact that he came from a situation at UNC where it wasn't necessarily this big powerhouse, right? He wasn't throwing to these top level guys who are going to be in the NFL. They weren't stomping like, Jabroni State 55 to nothing, scheduling the cupcakes and shit like that. I think that's
Right.
healthy for his development. So I'm curious to see that. Jaden Daniels, I worry about him in Washington. I don't know if he's going to get the support he needs there. Him
Tough
throwing over,
divisions. Tough
yeah,
divisions for both of these guys between the AFC East and NFC East too. I mean, you're talking about again Washington's in an awful position to have a young quarterback like that without any type of veteran experience. And honestly, same thing for New England. It's rare that more than two teams in the AFC East are rolling on all cylinders. But between Miami, Buffalo, and New York, even just defensively, is going to be a problem for a young developing quarterback in New England. That's 6 games out of your 17 game schedule. And same thing over there in Washington. You know, having Philadelphia and Dallas as right off the bat, 4 of your games, and you're trying to find a long term development prospect. That's a tall task for two divisions, for two teams, franchises that don't have a history of building up quarterbacks like that. I mean, we've seen the constant carousel that it's been in Washington. They're at like 15, 16 different starters in the past handful of years. So it's definitely tough divisions to try and start a rebuild for sure.
the NFC East especially is always so fucking bonkers. I know there's a stat where if you win it one year, it's very unlikely you win it again the next year,
Hmm.
right? If you show like the chart of all the division winners going back to 2000, they almost always alternate, like, Cowboys, Eagles, Giants, right? Just going back and forth. I'm curious
Hmm.
to see how he does there. Terry McLaurin is no slouch. I think that's a good starting piece.
No, they Curtis Samuel as well. They have a good duo over there. They have a defensive culture, but it goes back to what we mentioned before. A lot of it is built off the back of a young offensive line, usually accompanied by a core veteran or two, if you're lucky enough, and it all builds from there. I'm not sure who they have at running back right now in Washington, but again, it's going to be tough if they don't have the front five to protect their young guy in the pocket there. Again, in that type of division where everybody's pretty much built around defense, it's going to be very tough.
They got Brian Robinson at running back there, bro.
That's
Right?
right.
The
That's
legend
right.
himself, many men. He came
And
out
and,
that.
and again, talented young guy, but they need the big five. They need the big five for the protection there. And again, and putting pressure on a young running back like that again without known captain on the field there. You know what I mean? We got a rookie and nothing else behind that. I was actually big on the theory that again the league needs to start adjusting to how there was dual running backs for a period of time. You need two quarterbacks now. Your number two needs to be a number one, not a 40-year-old has been as your number two, but a guy that can, if they have to take the reins for 4 or 5 games, they can surely get you 2 or 3. They could keep you at 500 if your number one goes down. We've seen it over the years, for better or worse. Um, if you're not stacked and have depth in your quarterback room, again, it's big trouble. And again, especially with these young guys, we look at the Colts last year, with their young prospect, Anthony
Anthony
Richardson.
Richardson, yeah.
Yeah, the guy, by week 6, his season was done, and up until then, he had 3 different injuries over 3 different games, and they still had a great season. Their season, Gardner Minshew, I'm a fan of him, and their season came down to a drop screen pass in the final 10 seconds of a game, uh, and they lost their playoff seeding right there. But and to that point, Gardner Minshew, again, respectable, and you saw a little bit of late season play when Jalen was hurt 2 seasons ago. So you knew he's capable. And it's a smart move. So even now, if you're drafting a number one and you don't have a real number two there, it's trouble. But also the other way around. If you have your veteran quarterback and you draft a brand new guy and you want to develop him, you know, as a Jets fan, painfully, Zach Wilson. And I feel like, again, uh, where he's ended up, I would not be surprised to see his kid get a decent opportunity if there's an offensive line that could actually give him protection. But having a veteran quarterback and then a rookie with no experience behind him is a recipe that surely isn't going to work either. That's again what the Jets' failure was last year, and a number of other teams that lost their starter. The Vikings last year when Kirk went down. No real secondary guy. Same thing with Cincinnati when Burrow went down. No real number two guy. You need a number two guy that's going to be able to get you wins. You can't just fill in the depth chart with anybody anymore at the quarterback position.
Yeah, that reminds me, Kansas City, they had Chad Henne. Was it Chad Henne? Sitting
Yeah,
back
no,
there. And
I was actually thinking that I was going to list that and I left him out. So good call. Same thing. Veteran guy out of Miami.
he won
He
them a
was in.
playoff game, I remember correctly, right?
No, yeah, I
Yeah.
remember where I was. I actually watched that game and I couldn't. What was that against?
I want to say the Browns, he came in.
Yeah. I thought
Yeah.
it was the year before this past year, yeah, when Tua had several concussions early on in the year. And again, another case. If you have a halfway decent guy at the number two slot, um, you can still find success. And again, you can't forget Nick Foles for Philly, man. You know, he wins a Super Bowl coming into the playoffs with an injured Wentz. So it happens. But yeah, again, having a credible number two in the depth chart at quarterback is, in my opinion, we're going to see a lot more of it. I wouldn't be surprised to see a situation where it pops up again this year. But having 2 quarterbacks available is going to start becoming a must for a lot of teams that look to stay at 500 or above.
Yeah, all that big news coming out of the draft. And something I want to put a cap on there with my draft analysis. You probably saw all the draft news, right? The lead up, oh, this person tweeted this person said that. See, the cool thing about the sports media is that they can fucking lie just blatantly. And then due to our Zoomer attention span, our dopamine brain, people just kind of forget. It all just goes away. So you need to be wary of that if you're betting or simply just following your favorite team. Know that there are some beat reporters out there. They are just making shit up as they go. That blue check mark on Twitter, that blue check mark on Instagram, it don't mean shit, right? They can always just fabricate news stories. You've probably seen, oh yeah, I heard this guy is going here. Like I thought for sure, but the Chargers, excuse me, we're going to take a weapon on offense. That's why I mentioned that earlier. I didn't see them taking Joe Alt at all we heard in the lead up to the draft. Joe Alt, Tennessee Titans, guaranteed.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So if you're betting on this stuff, you're following this stuff, always take everything you see with a grain of salt. Come to your own conclusions because it's very easy for a team executive to call up, a guy, be like, hey, we need you to tweet out that we're actually interested in this guy or not. We want you to move the news a little bit, see if we can get a team to trade up or down with us. If you do that, I think you're going to have some press passes under your door come season time. So shit like that, it's a dirty game, boys. Draft day was as much of a documentary as it was a movie. Just got to be careful.
No, definitely what everybody wants to see out of a draft. We'll see how it pans out, but offensive heavy, so it's definitely exciting. And again, more news stories, more media coverage, because nobody's going to cover, you know, defensive linemen, offensive linemen, the typical discipline picks. Everybody wants the flash. We got a flash first round, so definitely again, and a lot of room for disrupting and false news narratives for other teams to push to move around their picks.
And also, on top of that, keep in mind, we could totally be wrong about all of this. I'll never forget the widely panned Seattle Seahawks draft from, man, fuck, it was a while ago now. I feel old. That was when Pete Carroll drafted the core of the Super Bowl rosters there, the roster that won a Super Bowl and went back to the other. He was able to get tons of guys out of the Pac 12, these lesser known guys, and due to Bobby focus on the SEC at the time. Carroll, because of his connections to the Pac 12, right? Remember, he was a coach at USC. He had the inside track on a lot of guys that the scouts just didn't know about. I remember it was widely, you know how they always do the draft grades? It was like
Right.
D plus, D minus, F. Every article came out said the Seattle Seahawks lost this draft. Well, they lost the draft, but they won a Super Bowl.
Yeah,
So as you can see, a lot of it depends on where these guys go and the infrastructure in place. You could be a top tier prospect. You're going to a place where the coaches are fighting, some other shit's going on. It's going to be very difficult for you to settle into your role. I remember reading when Mayfield, his first year in Cleveland, Hugh Jackson and Todd Haley. Hugh Jackson was the coach, Todd Haley was the OC. They were fucking fighting for control of the team. They were having a power struggle, and ownership had to fire them both by like week 7. So imagine you're a young guy, you come into that, right? So keep that in mind. So many variables at play.
absolutely.
And then moving on now, you want to do NBA or NHL?
We could cover NBA really quick. It's kind of crazy trying to keep the attention because we got games running right now for the series, but this will be coming out for Friday. So we'll cover a little bit of what's upcoming and what you may have missed if you were living under a rock and you didn't pay attention to shit all week. It's been a fantastic NBA playoff season to start. Um, Again, I'm the underdog guy, you know, and I just love a good underdog story or an unexpected story. And for me, right now, Aaron Gordon on Denver. Uh, this guy's storyline, career arc isn't exactly, you know, it's not massive, but it's just you love to see it. He went from somewhat, you know, irrelevant in Orlando. You know, he was their new hope post Dwight Howard. And then he's known as just, you know, being the dunker and kind of a flashy guy, you know, all flash but no win. And again, once again, or you know, like a lot of these teams, you know, they get stuck in the division that they're in, and you can't change that. And some of these divisions, basketball, baseball, hockey, it's some the being in a certain division is a lot of luck or it's an absolute curse. And you know, being placed on the Orlando Magic is very tough. You're in a very tough division in the NBA at that rate. But Aaron Gordon right now, just an absolute force for Denver. Uh, the Lakers cannot escape their curse from Denver. They're currently on 11 games straight losing to Denver. Unreal. Book it with Trent absolutely cursing them all the way into the ground. But again, Aaron Gordon's impact on this team, unless you're not watching the games, it's impossible to not notice his level of physicality, his level of defense, just straight up hustle basketball, makes the game more exciting to watch. And really, that's Denver's style in general. They aren't so much pacing the floor, shoot a three, run back. They play physical basketball, and he fits in there very well. And again, you just like to see, you know, the big favorited team, not necessarily completely overshadowed by the superstar. You like seeing the role player emerge into a dominant role when they need to. And again, the Lakers aren't exactly scrubs. I've caught quite a little bit of all the NBA games. LeBron looks fantastic out there. It's unreal that he's playing to the level that he is. It's a shame, again, just the overall depth of their roster. Russ looks great. AD looks great, but not for a full 4 quarters, and it's unfortunate. Forgot what the stat was that I saw earlier today. I believe it's the first time in playoff history a team has been leading by 10 points in all 3 games, and they've lost all 3. So absolutely gut wrenching if you're a Lakers fan. My heart goes out to you, but it looks like Denver's absolutely taking the 4 sweep there. That'll be tomorrow. That's on later on the day, Saturday, I believe. Um, you got Knicks Philly, probably the most entertaining series right now as far as rivalry. The 76ers took one on Thursday night. They're off for the next couple days. That'll be on Sunday. A huge game 4 in Philly. That's, in my opinion, must see TV. That's going to be an incredibly exciting game to watch on both sides, given that both teams have a completely healthy roster. I know Embiid might have been a little bit banged up, and the Knicks, Mitch Robinson didn't play in the second half. Um, Otherwise, the no, I'm sorry, the Pacers and Bucks, that game should be finishing up. Last I looked, the Pacers were up by almost 15 or 20. So they're looking to take that series to 2-1 right now, which is huge. And then the Heat, insane. If
Heat
anybody,
culture,
say it again.
heat culture, baby.
If anybody was able to jump on those odds for game 2, and if anybody played that, I believe they went before the game plus 1,300. And I'm not sure where the line was for Boston particularly, but Miami now has 4 playoff games in the past 2 years with over 50% shooting from threes against Boston. No other team has done that. It's just incredible. Last night, also crazy moment during the Knicks game. I believe the Sixers, went 10 for 12 from 3 in the third quarter. Absolutely absurd to watch. So we're seeing a bit of well, did you see that type of moments? Which again, this was looking like an unexciting playoff bracket for the NBA, at least in this beginning series, but it's panning out to be pretty exciting. The Cavs Orlando series, not sure anybody really cares about that too much, but Orlando battled back Thursday night to even out that. Um, and yeah, that's what I got for the NBA, but definitely, in my opinion, probably the story not talked about enough right now is how much Aaron Gordon is showing out in Denver. He looks incredible.
And speaking about that Denver Lakers series, I saw a stat today. LeBron and AD actually outscored Jokic and Murray. They beat them by over 10 points. But
And
the Denver bench versus the Lakers bench, by God, it was a chasm. It was the fucking Grand Canyon in terms of effectiveness. I believe the the Denver bench outscored them by 20, if not more, if not by much more. So when you have roster construction of um, that much of an imbalance, you need to realize that that's going to rear its ugly head in the playoffs. I know tons of Lakers fans are upset with Genie Bus. They're upset with Pelinka in terms of how they've managed the team post 2020 championship. A lot of them wanted to keep Caruso. They thought there's a world where they could have kept Kuzma, they could have kept KCP. And the Westbrook trade, when they panicked and they made that trade, I think ever since then you can see a steady decline in the Lakers contending for a championship. And then touching upon the Ever series as well, that Knicks Philly series is about to get really fucking toxic because Embiid, he was on something in that game. I believe he got more free throws himself than the entire Knicks team did. So anytime you see that, you flash back to the Lakers Sacramento series back in 2002, where you start asking some questions there. And I
well, the big
remember,
turning point in that game was that he had 3 fouls in that first half, and he did not pick up a single foul for the rest of the game. Considering that context, it was kind of intense in that first half because the Knicks had Isaiah Hartenstein and both Mitch down to 3 fouls as well. So it looked like there was a possible situation brewing where both teams were going to lose all they really had in big men. And unfortunately, the Knicks were on the poor side of that. The the officiating conversation that's been viral with this series for the past week, it's kind of snoozing me a bit, but that's my pessimistic side as a bitter New York fan. New York hasn't gotten a call since calls were invented. Uh, I invite you to watch. You could and it doesn't matter how winning the franchise is or not. If you watched and it doesn't mean too much in the big scheme of things, but over on the MLB side, if we want to take a side tangent real quick, just about officiating right now in general, across all sports, it's becoming a problem, and I feel like it's ushering in to the point where there's got to be a computer system type of way for tracking some of these things, and it's 100% or not all the way, because we're seeing it in NFL with the absolutely egregious roughing the passer calls and pass interference calls, where the commentators can't even agree on it. Your buddy on the couch and you can't agree with it, and both of you aren't even a fan of either of the teams. And we're seeing it in the NBA now, right? We could see 46 minutes of a game called one way, and then the last 2 minutes it's called another. And MLB, we're seeing, and again, I played baseball for about 15, 16 years of my life, and anybody that's played ball to any level really know every umpire has his own strike zone. Okay, this guy's a little bit lower. Okay, I gotta be a little bit more aggressive at balls lower in the strike zone. But then it changes to high, and then it changes to outside. It's so inconsistent right now in every sport, and it's to the matter of the sport that is very direct to the outcome. Um, and so again, with this Philly and New York series, we'd almost be better off with no officials, so we know who the finite winner is, because game one, game two, you could argue how the hell did New York pull that out, because they were playing 5 or 6 basketball. But then if you're a Philly fan, I could totally see how you're seeing the other side, and there's just no calls, because a no call is just as bad as a bad call, and I'm sure you've seen that plenty on the NHL side. Sometimes a no call has more of an effect than something that is called, and it's just way too inconsistent in games that really matter, especially in the postseason.
Yeah, playoff hockey is built on not calling penalties every year. Fans always ask, "What the fuck is that? Isn't that a hooking call?" And we all go, "Yeah." It's just not during these months of the year. For better or worse, that's the reputation the game has in the spring. They call significantly less, and if you think it's bad now, wait until you get into like the third round. The conference finals are going to be some of the dirtiest, grittiest hockey you'll ever see in your life. If you haven't watched before, if you've watched casually, the only thing, just to touch on your previous points there, talking about the strike zone, every MLB fan I know wakes up in cold sweats thinking about Angel Hernandez, right? They say that Angel is the devil. And for the Knicks 76ers series, if they took the refs away, I think Embiid would just keep injuring all of the Knicks centers, right? He injured Mitchell Robinson there. And it's hard for me not to think, if that's not a superstar who's doing that, that's perhaps a flagrant two. But it's Embiid, and you're not going to throw out Embiid in a primetime game down 2-0 at home in Philly, right? Those people will riot. They'll burn the fucking place to the ground. You don't want
and
that.
and you would think, but and
Oh,
again, right,
want to see something
and
fucking
and
cool?
and you could definitely argue.
Look at that.
Good,
Let
there you
there be
go.
light.
And again, and it goes back to that same point though, the inconsistency. If that was a bench player who came up off the bench and it's his first minute in the game and he hits the floor and then he's grabbing at a big man's ankle, that's a flagrant two and you're out of here. But and again, you got to remember, if there was no officials for the New York Philly series, we would have a 5v5 MMA bout to bet on, and that sounds like cash.
That does. That sounds awesome. The fans would probably be involved too, so perhaps 66 would have some Connor Khabib things, guys flying into the stands. I can
Oh
see it.
man.
And speaking of fighting, let's talk about fucking playoff hockey. So, I hyped up the NHL as the tournament with the most parity, back and forth game sevens, and yeah, that didn't happen in the East this year. The Panthers steamrolled the Lightning, the Hurricanes steamrolled the Islanders. I don't know what the Islanders are doing. Well, they're doing their best, but man, up 3-0 in game two, they blow it. Must
Mm-hmm.
win game at home in game three. The game just gets away from them. They're chasing the score the whole time. Tampa, they come out a little flat in game one. Well, okay, you can see that. Game two, they tie it. They're buzzing, but Bobrovsky assembles all the fucking Dragon Balls. He puts on the Infinity Gauntlet. Any type of anime superhero bullshit you believe in, that man was on that night. He was making diving saves, glove saves. Vasilevsky was able to match him, but at the end of the day, the Panthers won that game. And then that game 3, Tampa up 2-1 at home. Historically, watching that Tampa team up 2-1, must-win game in the playoffs, you're like, okay, here it is. They're back on their bullshit. And to see them blow that to me is jarring, right? That to me, it makes me think that the salary cap finally caught up to them. Perhaps that bottom 6 is not as strong as it used to be. Those bottom defensemen are not as strong as it used to be. Before, they would just be fucking marching out like Yanni Gord, all these guys who could be second line on another team. They'd have them on their third line, and that's where Tampa would grind out those advantages. So Panthers up 3-0, Hurricanes up 3-0 on the Islanders. Rangers Capitals, that game is going on right now. You said the Caps were up 1-0.
No, it's 2-1 now. I was just gonna update you. We're in first intermission. Rangers up 2-1. So we got a high scoring burner, three goals in the first period, and 2 consecutive goals from the Rangers.
Yeah, that sounds about how that series would go. I feel for all the Pittsburgh Penguin fans watching at home. They got Crosby, they got Malkin, they got Erik Karlsson. If they tried just a little bit earlier in the season, they're probably wild card 2 facing the Rangers. It's probably much more competitive. Instead, the Rangers are just bulldozing the Capitals. I think the talent discrepancy is just catching up to them. Not a ton to say there. The Rangers are a wagon. And the final series in the East, the Bruins and the Maple Leafs. The war to end all wars, I believe. I saw a stat today. It's the NHL hit leaders. It's the top 10. I believe 9 of them are from that series. I believe 8 of them are from that series, right? Are just all Bruins or Leafs players. That should tell you about the level of contentiousness between these two teams. They don't like each other at all. The big storylines I've seen are Mitchell Marner is getting a lot of heat there in that Toronto media. He has not been good enough in the eyes of the fans, and Toronto fans, when they're on you, they are fucking on you. Like it'll flash you back to those 2009 Xbox Live days when you just had complete degeneracy yelling back and forth at each other over the microphones.
Back
Whatever
in
you
the
do.
day, still.
Oh no, bro! I can tell you right now, as someone who played back then and someone who plays now, I know I sound like the classic boomer here. You know, waving
Oh,
my fist
no
in the air, talking
comparison.
about how people, would drink water from the hose and kids played outside. Guys, back then it was just different. Like the threats and shit you would hear, it was bad. It was bad. Like I once saw a screenshot. This is a small little tangent of a message like from old Xbox Live. Some kid messaged another kid and said, "I'm going to travel back in time, steal a dinosaur egg, incubate it, raise it in my own, teach it the ways of socialization, and then watch it devour you and tear you apart, eat your innards while I sit in the corner and stroke myself off." That's what old Xbox Live was. Okay, old Xbox Live was fucking Arkham Asylum, and it was great.
Man,
But anyway, I digress.
took us for a
So,
ride there. But speaking of war, for the Bruins Maple Leafs game, as of right now, all the odds that are listed, it's the only game that is split odds, -110 to -110. So the odds makers agree with you. Should be an absolute war, and it looks like an absolute 50-50. So
I'm very curious to see if the Bruins go back to Swayman in net in Game 4. Swayman's been excellent against the Maple Leafs all year. He was excellent in Games 1 and 3. And then people say, well, the reason he's so good is because they rotate the goalies. The goaltenders are always fresh. Having Omar come in, and Omar looked good in Game 2. Don't let the media lie to you and say that Omar was the reason they lost that game. They lost that game because Toronto was faster, hungrier to the puck. They were able to get the puck out of their zone with their breakouts and their defensemen getting the puck up ice. So I'm curious to see what happens there. And finally, William Nylander for Toronto has been trying to play these last few games, and he just can't. He sustained an injury in the last game of the season, and that's kept him out. And there's always debate about that in all the sports. If you're playing at the end and you're a championship contender, do you really care about that last game? Even if there is a little seeding up for grabs, are you going to play your guys? Some people say, okay, I want them fresh. I want them ready for the playoffs. Other people say, no, you don't do that. You rest them. For me, I'm always going to lean towards resting your guys, especially in hockey. Playoff hockey, by the time the Stanley Cup finals roll around, every guy is hurt, right? Even the guys who aren't on the injury report are fucking hurt. They're limping.
oh
It's bad.
oh yeah.
So I'm curious to see if that's the final nail in the coffin for Sheldon Keefe up there in Toronto, the management of Nylander, and the potential losing again to the Bruins. It's like the Nuggets and the Lakers. It's like fucking Groundhog Day. Definition of insanity. Same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. And then if you look at the Western Conference, that's a bit more interesting. Those are some more contentious back and forth series. Edmonton, LA, Vegas, and Dallas is a 2-0 in favor of Vegas because the
Yeah.
salary cap isn't real and life's not fair, and you can cheat your way to the top. Hashtag Bernie Madoff. But I digress. I'll talk about that in a sec. And then in the Central Division, you have Winnipeg and Avalanche. They go tonight. Should be an absolute banger of a game. Anytime those two teams play, it's just all gas, no brakes. And then finally, you have the series. I already did the Central Series. I did Edmonton. Oh yeah, Nashville and Vancouver. They're also playing right now. That's 1-1. Thatcher Demko is hurt. He's out. So I think there's some excellent storylines shaping up there in the West. And the big thing everybody's talking about is that the Dallas Stars won the Western Conference, right? They're the 1 seed. They should be playing a wild card, but that wild card happens to be A, the Vegas Golden Knights, and B, if you follow hockey, you know that Vegas is doing some creative accounting up there in their GM suite. They're doing some 2008 Wall Street shit where Mark Stone, he goes on IR magically. Vegas trades for star players. Stone comes off IR. Suddenly you're facing a roster well above the salary cap that can play you an exception in the playoffs, and you're behind the 8 ball. And we saw those contributions from those guys, Hannafin, Hurdle, and Stone, instrumental in those first 2 wins. For Dallas fans, I'd be losing my fucking mind a little bit. I'm curious to see if they close that loophole. Randy, you have any thoughts on these NHL playoffs?
I'm anxious right now because we have the Canucks on, and I was a front runner for them. Um, two series. If I have any real substantial thought with where we're at, about halfway into all these series right now, is what surprises me, and it may not surprise anybody else, but it's the fact that these 2-0 series currently, the fact that the Rangers have gone up 2-0 and they have not screwed it up yet, because this is a series that they should sweep. Uh, but on our last talk last week, again, I had predicted that this was going to be a long series, and you know, New York was going to take their lumps, and the Capitals could potentially take this to 6 or 7. We will find out tonight if the Capitals have the chops. They may not be able to keep up with the pace. They just have not been able to find the offense. They started to pick up a little bit last game, but where they were able to score once in each period, but they just cannot keep up with the Rangers. So it's surprising to see the level of consistency, especially in the New York market during crunch time. We just don't see it often. So would be it's a pleasant surprise as a New York market guy myself to see them go up 2-0 when they should. Um, I always leave a little room for doubt with the New York market when it comes time to postseason, especially if they're favorited. But then also with the Vegas Knights, I'm very surprised that they have gone up 2-0 in this series for pretty much about the same reasons. I feel like they should win that series. I feel like it should be a 5-gamer at most. But the fact that they're doing what I feel like that they should be doing there, and again being up in the series 2-0 to start, uh, surprising. Surprising right now that we don't have a big headlining upset on a series right now. Uh, if anything, the biggest disappointment, the Islanders for sure. Being down that hard in that series and the way they've gone down, uh, disappointing for sure. But that's where I'm at. It's very early. Um, I think probably at the end of Saturday, the picture becomes a little bit clearer, but it seems like right now everything is on almost a too predictable trajectory, which is, again, surprising to see that we don't have a major upset story right now.
Yeah, in the NHL, usually the first round, a top seed almost always dumps to a lower seed. But this year, that just isn't the case. The top seeds in the East are taking care of business. Toronto, Boston seems to be the only competitive series of those so far. The Islanders, for the record, the Islanders aren't this bad. People are wondering how they make the playoffs. The Islanders are like a car, like a sports car. All these excellent parts together, but something is missing. Maybe it's
Mm-hmm.
the starter, maybe it's the alternator, maybe one of the tires is loose. So you look at this excellent card from the outside, you look up and down that roster, Bo Horvat, Matthew Barzal, all these great guys. And then they go out there and they'll dominate for a little bit, and then it just kind of falls apart. Something's missing. I think them letting go Barry Trotz as coach was fucking bad, like really bad. He was the gel that held that team together. He understood how to get the most out of his guys. I don't think that decision was. They should have paid the man. Is all I'm saying. All right, they should have paid the man what he was worth. And then yeah, other than that, my main big takeaway: Vegas is just going to keep pissing people off as much as they win. Edmonton, LA. I really want to know if LA can finally beat them this time. The Los Angeles Kings haven't won a playoff series since they won the Cup back in 2014. Generally, they play that 1-3-1 and they shut the game down in the neutral zone. But when you're against, Edmonton, Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, they'll literally just go around whatever you do. The 1-3-1 isn't necessarily successful against a team with that much speed, breakout ability, and offensive firepower. I wonder if LA will just keep trying to clamp down, or in that game too, they kind of leaned into the fact that Edmonton can have those defensive lapses. They tried to go stride for stride with them, and they ended up winning 5-4 in overtime. Very curious to see how that pans out. And then we'll end
That's
right
probably
now.
the potential upset series that we have left, in my opinion. That now that you bring that up, I actually forgot about that series. The Kings, with the fact that that's 1-1 right now, if they could take one, that's at 10:30 tonight, 10:30 on Friday night,
Yep.
and they're home dogs right now too. It's looking kind of juicy.
The market loves Edmonton, but in hockey that don't matter. The
Yeah,
market can be wrong all the time in hockey. Yeah, that's probably the most likely upset we have left of all of them. Watch Edmonton beat them like 6-0 tonight.
we can just
Yeah,
edit it out.
yeah, we'll just edit it out. This is for our producer Charles. This is me, Boston guy in Massachusetts. The Celtics need to win Game 3 tomorrow in dominant fashion, because anytime you do shit like that, you're dropping at home 10, 14-point favorites. The whispers start. And people can talk about fundamentals, how good the roster is on paper and all that. Porzingis isn't going to shoot that poorly again. The Heat aren't going to shoot that well again. In theory, even though, like you said, they did it 3 fucking times before. But in my old videos, in the playoffs, are you a dog? Are you angry? Can you handle that discomfort? The Heat
Postseason
have,
Jimmy Butler's a dog, brother.
he's on the sidelines right now, but like the spirit of Jimmy Butler is infecting all those Heat starters. It's infecting Martin, Hero, Bam. I wonder if that series is going to get extended far longer than it should be, because you have Spoelstra, who's just an amazing coach, and the Heat culture. Some people love it, some people hate it, but they draft dogs and they develop dogs. And sometimes when you come out and you're not ready to be punched in the mouth like that, you have that excellent team, you've been on top all year, that can be a little jarring. So I'd like to see them respond to the adversity. No bullshit, right? No Celtics third quarter, they implode. I want to see a wire-to-wire winner from them to kind of, I know it's weird to say cement themselves as contenders as if they're not the fucking 1 seed in the NBA, but I want to
Oh,
see
they
a
need
statement.
it.
Yeah,
They need it.
yeah.
I mean, and they're giving 9.5 right now, so it'll be really interesting to see where that line moves. Because again, now you got the Heat money line's currently sitting at plus 340 for Miami. That is a massive swing, going from like plus 1,300 underdogs the game before to now they take that game and now they're all that's 1,000-point swing is insane for a 1 game result. That's impacting the odds that much.
That's the playoffs, baby. So
Insane.
in fucking sane. That's all I have for tonight, Randy. I know you mentioned you had a little UFC. You want to touch upon that? You want to wrap up?
If anybody's feeling daring enough, this isn't the most spicy fight night card that we have. A lot of lower market names, but those actually turn out to be a lot of banger cards. Find yourself a new favorite fighter, and just again catch some unsuspecting up and comers make some noise on a less suspecting card. UFC 301. I suppose we will cover that next week. That looks very interesting. I don't know if you've seen any of the matchups that are on that, but if oh man, there's a couple on there. That's one of them. But So we have Machado and Mays. It's a heavyweight bout. It's on the prelims. So you get your UFC wager fix in early. You don't got to sweat a whole night. You don't got to sweat a whole card. Card starts at 6 p.m. I think this is second or third on the prelims, so it should go on by about 7:30. Machado out of Brazil, Mays, American. I'm heavy leaning Machado here. Anytime we see heavyweights, especially with only a couple fights in the UFC, this is Machado's second fight. Uh, well, one on the Dana White's Contender Series, and then his debut. Both fights ended in decision. One was a win, one was a loss. Prior to that, though, we have submission win, TKO, TKO, decision majority. So guy finishes fights. Opponent does a bit of the same, but the record is suspect. He has not strung together consecutive wins in quite some time. He has finishes himself, I believe, at a 60% rate of his wins are by knockout. But the odds right now have Machado at -120, Mays at +100. Find it strange that the line is this tight here, but we have which again is good. That's Friday because we have our prop bet odds out. The fight to go the distance is +110 for no, which it's a heavyweight bout. These guys are usually coming out swinging no matter how high or low they are on the talent pool. I love a heavyweight fight to finish, and especially the resume of both guys. They finish a high percentage of their fights combined. I believe like 75% of their fights. I was doing the math on that earlier. 75% of their fights combined end in a finish. So I'm looking at right now leaning on the fight to not go the distance for the underdog odds +110, or we have the fight to end by KO, TKO, DQ at +175. Make it make sense for me. I'm not sure why that is so juice, and that a knockout finish is with this line that high. I'm not sure. So to me right now, that value stuck out immediately, and that's what I'm leaning on. Just an early prelim, uh, one hit quitter heavyweight fight, probably over in the first round. It looks like it can go either way. Goes both guys are a bit up there in age, but again, I lean Machado on this, but the prop bet wager is probably the safer wager here with KO, TKO, or DQ with +175. That's on BetMGM.
For me, the only fight I was looking at that card is Silva versus Lipski. To me, if Lipski can survive the blitz in the first round, not get put into the submission position, I think she 100% has the advantage. She has the longer career, more experience in the octagon. Once you get past that 7 minute mark, I think she really starts to take over fights. That would be my lean there. But like, it's such a volatile fight, and I haven't looked into the card enough. You'll notice I didn't give a whole analysis of the UFC card this week because I always tell you if you don't know about something, don't bet on it. So
Right.
I didn't do a ton of research, so I'm not going to have a ton of handle down. I've been focused on the NHL playoffs, and that sometimes, like I said, the best decisions are the ones you don't make.
Refreshing take to hear, man. Because again, especially, I don't expect anybody, any sports bettor or casual fan, to waste their time with any degree of film study or dialing in on a particular player, unless you're an absolute fanatic and you love the sport. But when it comes to combat sports, to pretty much exactly how you just said it. If you don't know who the fighters are and you haven't at least watched uh, past two, past three fights, note a progression, note similarities from those bouts, differences, then watch the other fighter, and you actually can speak to something there. MMA again, it's probably the most volatile sport that you possibly can bet on, but uh, yeah, you probably should stay away from betting guys that you haven't at least watch a little bit of tape on. because it really matters in combat sports. You know, at the end of the day, with most other sports, you could just look at the two teams, pick the one with the cooler name, or pick the one with the better payout. Whatever you want to do, it's up to you. But fighting is absolutely, there's certainly an edge to be had there if you do your film study. And again, you know your two fighters that you're looking at, and you know the tendencies and you know the possibilities that could happen there for as volatile as it is. I definitely would leave the guesswork betting outside of combat sports for sure.
Combat sports is volatile and wild, like you said. A lot of people lost their parlay when their last leg was Devin Haney and Ryan Garcia went. I woke up, saw the news and the discourse around that fight, and I was like, well, was he just fucking faking it the whole time? And he was like, yeah, I was
Well,
trolling. I've never
yeah.
seen a man do that before. Troll, bet on himself, and just walk away $60 million richer. I don't know whether to be happy because it's like fucking funny or to be stunned because it kind of goes into some of the things we talk about on the show of how volatile the markets are and how there's manipulation. He realized, wait a minute, it's just me in this fight. I'm the only variable. Like, there's no team around me. I'll just fuck around a little bit, drive the odds up, and let's get a payday, boys.
Degenerates worldwide rejoiced. I'm telling you, that was anybody who's I'll just say off the deep end, that was a W. Seeing Garcia win for me, just an absolute sham. It was like watching Logan Paul fight. I'm just depressed and just want to go to sleep afterward.
Yep. So there you go. That's a win for all the schizophrenics out there. I can say the voices in my head had Garcia by decision at plus 1,200, so they cashed out big. Unfortunately, I didn't myself, but yeah, great fight. And we just recapped a lot of sports here on the show. So if you like the show, please leave a comment, like, subscribe. I know it's a fucking broken record at this point. You know, people tell you to do that. We tell you to do that because it works. Don't hate the player, hate the game, and love it or hate it. The underdog's on top, and hopefully we'll be on top of the charts sometime, someday. In the early stages of the show, we're going to keep grinding. All right, boys. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Ryan.
Thank you for having me, man.
You got me feeling lucky. I'm putting everything on black.